on the poll books in the state of Wisconsin. And of course, again, Wisconsin does have Election Day registration, which allows voters who have lived at their current address for at least 10 days to register to vote on the same day that they cast their ballot on Election Day. Any voter who has changed their name or address, or if they're new to voting in the state of Wisconsin, is going to need to register to vote. Based on historical numbers, more than 250,000 voters will register on Election Day in the state of Wisconsin. Many of those voter registrations on Election Day are folks that may be updating their address or their name information, not necessarily new voters to the state. If your ID's address is old, so let's say that you've gone to the DMV and you have updated your address with the DMV, but you have not paid to get a new card issued to you, again, that's going to mean that you're going to have to bring something else with you if you need to register to vote for that proof of residence document. So again, this is for voter registration, not photo ID. You're going to have to show something that has your current address on it, like a bank statement, a phone bill, or any document from a unit of government. So that's the first thing that voters need to know is register to vote, and you can do that on Election Day at your polling place. The next thing to know is that once you're registered to vote, in order to get your ballot, you're going to need to show an acceptable photo ID. So once you're registered to vote, a good rule of 3 to keep in mind is state, show, and sign. When a voter goes to the polls to get their ballot, they're going to need to state their name and address. Then they're going to need to show their acceptable photo ID. And then they're going to need to sign the poll book. So state, show, sign, that's what you need to do in order to get a ballot after you're registered. Most people already have the acceptable photo ID they need to vote in the state of Wisconsin. So something like a Wisconsin driver license or a Wisconsin state ID card. What the poll workers are looking for on that acceptable photo ID is they're looking to see that the name reasonably conforms to the name that's on the poll book. So let's say that you're registered as James, but your photo ID says Jim. That's okay, that conforms. And they're also going to be looking to see that that ID falls into the acceptable expiration time frame. So if you're using a Wisconsin driver license or state ID card, it can actually be expired since the last general election, and the date of the last general election was November 8th of 2016. So if it's expired since then, they can still use that Wisconsin driver license or state ID card. There are other forms of ID that can also be used, including a U.S. passport, something like a tribal ID, or a student ID along with an enrollment verification document can also be used. A really important thing to keep in mind is that a photo ID for voting purposes, so again, this is after you're registered to vote and you're going to get a ballot, when you show that photo ID, it does not need to have your current address on it. So the poll worker should not be looking at your address for photo ID purposes. So again, if you've been issued a new, or if you've updated your address with the DMV, but you have not opted to pay for a new ID card with that address on it, they're not looking for for a current address when they're looking at photo ID. The state of Wisconsin also has an official website for photo ID information, and that's bringit.wi.gov. And the Bring It website, again, just goes over what acceptable photo ID in the state of Wisconsin is and how to obtain one if you don't already have one. And that brings me to the next thing that voters need to know, and that is if you do not already have one of the acceptable forms of photo ID for voting here in the state of Wisconsin, it's not too late. You can still go to the DMV and obtain a driver license or a state ID card for voting purposes in time for the election. If you do not have the ID that you need for voting before Election Day, you can actually cast what's called a provisional ballot. And a provisional ballot allows you to cast your votes for who you'd like to vote for on Election Day. That ballot is then placed in a provisional ballot envelope, and then it gives you an opportunity to obtain that photo ID that you need before the Friday after the election. So you would then bring in your acceptable photo ID to your clerk's office in order for your provisional ballot to be counted. And if someone's looking to get an ID before Election Day or in order to remedy that provisional ballot, and they do not have some of the documents that are needed to get a traditional state of Wisconsin ID card, like a birth certificate or other documentation, there is what's called the ID petition process. And this allows you to get an acceptable photo ID for voting purposes without having to provide additional documentation should you not have any. So if somebody has no documentation or limited documentation, but they're still looking to get one of those IDs, they should go to the DMV and enter into the ID petition process in order to get that ID before Election Day or in order to remedy that provisional ballot. The next things that voters should know is that their vote is secure. Wisconsin election systems are secure thanks to our very strong partnership with our federal and state agencies as well as with local election officials. There is no evidence that Wisconsin's election systems have ever been compromised. We have taken extraordinary steps and measures in the last few years to ensure that our voter registration and vote counting systems are secure. On Monday, several members of our staff participated in an election security tabletop exercise that was led by the Department of Homeland Security. Other participants in this tabletop exercise included Adjutant General Major General Dunbar and his staff from the Wisconsin National Guard, Wisconsin Emergency Management, the FBI, the Department of Justice, the Wisconsin Division of Enterprise Technology, and county clerks. And this was an excellent opportunity for us to make sure that the plan that we have in place to respond to any election security events. So we've been working with these folks over the course of the last few years to make sure that we have a strong plan in place to respond to any events that might occur. And this gave us a chance to make sure that that plan is in full force, in full effect as we head into next Tuesday. And so as a result of that tabletop exercise, we did take a few additional measures in this last week. And one of those included providing a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week hotline for municipal and local election officials to be able to report any kind of election security event to us. So regardless of what time of the day a local election official might become aware of some type of cyber threat or some kind of election emergency, they will be able to contact someone and potentially have someone deployed to that area in order to mitigate and remedy that situation in a very timely manner. It is quite humbling the amount of resources that we have available to us here at the Elections Commission in terms of responding to any type of election security event. I would say that we're a well-oiled machine along with our federal and state partners in ensuring that we have more than adequate resources to handle anything that might come our way. We never know exactly what Election Day might look like or what the challenges are that we might face, but we feel like we are well prepared to handle whatever might come our way. Anyone with questions about election security should also know that they have lots of opportunities to view the process publicly. So Election Day and also the events that follow Election Day, like Election Night when votes are actually counted, or the day after when the municipal boards of canvass meet to start to certify those election results, or when the county board of canvass meets to certify the results at their level, or even when the state certifies election results at our level. All of those processes are publicly observable. So anybody that wants to know that their vote is being counted and observe that process of how that happens and how those certifications happen, how reconciliation takes place, they can actually attend those events and watch the process for themselves. Another thing that happens that is also publicly available is the pre-election voting equipment tests. Some of those have already occurred in some communities. And then the post-election audits that occur in randomly selected municipalities throughout the state after the election. And these are tests that, again, we're going to select randomly about 185 municipalities after the election whose pieces of voting equipment will be audited, and those are publicly available processes that voters can go watch to make sure that they have an eye on exactly how that is done. We also have a page on our website that's dedicated to election security and all the efforts that we have taken to secure elections here in the state of Wisconsin. So if you go to elections.wi.gov, there is a voting security webpage there as well.
Linked on the front page.
Yep, it's linked right on the front page of that. And the final thing that voters need to know is where to find trusted and accurate information on elections as we head into next Tuesday. So the Wisconsin Elections Commission is the official source of information for voters when it comes to finding their polling place, viewing a sample ballot, or checking the status of their voter registration. And the Wisconsin Elections Commission's website, myvote.wi.gov, is where voters can find that information. This is a big election, and there are a lot of people that want to help voters and may try to create their own tools, and they may even do so out of very good intent. There's other people that may try to give voters information out of malintent. And so we want to make sure that people know where to go to find that accurate, trusted information. And again, we recommend that they use the myvote.wi.gov website, as well as the Elections Commission and the materials and information that we put out. We are also available on Twitter and Facebook, and we try to keep those accounts posted regularly. So on Twitter, we're at WI_elections, and that's our verified account where you can follow along if there is anything unfolding in elections on Election Day. And I think that's what we have in terms of what voters should know as they head to the polls next Tuesday. And with that, I'll turn it over to Reed.
Yeah, I mean, we're here to answer your questions. We sent out the media advisory telling you about, if you want to go to the polling place and observe there, take pictures, what the rules are, those sorts of things. If you have any questions about that, if you have any other questions about how things are going, just ask away.
So this is Mark Summerhauser with the State Journal. Just to clarify and make sure I'm understanding correctly, the governor's executive order, it sounds like that was just put out. That's not in response to any specific threats that, the Elections Commission or the state's been made aware of relating to election security. It's just something that's purely precautionary. Is that right?
Yes, that is not in response to any particular event. We work very closely with our state and federal partners just to make sure that we're all postured in a way that people can respond if something is to come our way on Election Day.
This is Riley from West Politics. Could you address a story? There was a story in ProPublica today talking about that Wisconsin turned off its FTP service, and they're saying that this was software that was helping to report election results, and that it could potentially expose information to hackers. Could you address that report? I'm assuming that ProPublica was in contact with you guys.
Yeah, we'd be glad to address that. So unfortunately, there were some inaccuracies in that story. That is not the website that is used to collect or maintain any of the official results, especially on election night. So the site that they were referencing is the elections.wi.gov website. That is not our statewide voter registration database. That is not anything that has anything to do with voter information or election administration information. It's simply a static web page that has information like press releases or other information that we might make available to the public. But ports are used for general maintenance on websites, and we liken a port like this to in 2016 we talked a lot about scanning activity. So somebody that might be trying to find a vulnerability on a website, so they might be walking down a street, shaking on doorknobs to try to find one that's unlocked. In this case, this port was a locked door, so if somebody shook on the door, they would not be able to get in if they didn't have the keys. But let's say that person wanted to case the joint for a while to see how the legitimate person gained access to it, or maybe steal the keys. They might be able to obtain access if they were to get credentials to access that door. But now that we're closer to the election, we have taken steps to make sure that we brick over that door so that it is no longer accessible to anybody, even if they were to unlawfully gain credentials.
Okay, but you're saying that even if they did gain access to it, they wouldn't be able to gain access to any compromising information, any voter registration information?
Absolutely not. There's zero chance of that.
There's no confidential information on that website. It's the website that you guys go to when you're looking for press releases. If you're looking to see, in 2016 how many people voted absentee, that kind of stuff. It's it's our public-facing website, but there's no, as you know, there's no election night results on there or anything like that.
Yeah, as you're all probably well aware, we're not in the business of, official election night results. Unofficial election night results are passed through to the counties, who then have the responsibility to post those unofficial results from the municipalities on the county websites. All we do on election night is post links to the county websites, and so that's as much of a role as that website plays in election results.
Number of questions about the governor's executive order. So, did you request National Guard assistance, and how will this play out? Will we see troops in front of polling places? Is General Dunbar going to be in your shop on election night? Essentially, will he be running the show on this? How does this interplay with the Election Commission? Are you still in charge of state elections?
We are absolutely still in charge of state elections. General Dunbar and his team have just been excellent resources in this. Again, all they're doing is making sure that if we need them as a resource, that they're available. I am the chief election official for the state of Wisconsin, and nothing about that is changing. And you will not see anything different at the polling places. The National Guard will not have a presence in the polling places, and no, General Dunbar will not be here in our office, certainly not running the show. The Elections Commission staff will still be running elections here at the state level.
I would think that the only time, Todd,
what is their mission?
Well, Todd, the one thing I would say is the only time somebody might see somebody from the National Guard is if there were a natural disaster or something like that, and the National Guard needed to be called out to help, move a polling place or clear a road or something like that. That's the sort of thing that we're talking about. More or less.
And they also have a lot of really great resources available to state agencies. So let's say there were some kind of a cyber event in the state of Wisconsin where we needed help and we needed people deployed to that area of the state. They actually have cyber response teams that we can work with that coordinate with our other state and federal partners. And so they're just a resource for us to be able to utilize should there be any type of emergency.
Is it unusual for the governor to make a preemptive order like this?
It was not per our request.
I'm sorry, could you repeat what you just said?
I guess I'm not sure if you're asking if we requested this, but we did not. We did not proactively make this request.
We've worked with the National Guard for a long time, and with General Dunbar as part of the Homeland Security for quite some time, and I think this simply gives General Dunbar the ability to deploy resources if something big were to come up.
Has the governor ever issued an order of this type prior to an election that you're aware of?
You might ask the governor's office.
So you don't know?
I don't recall that happening, but you could add that they would know.
Okay. Are you worried at all that this is some kind of a power play?
Not at all. The National Guard and General Dunbar have been just fantastic in helping us navigate the world of Homeland Security and a lot of stuff, and we welcome their input, but this is not this is much less than you might imagine it is.
And it would be unwise, I think, for us not to utilize or engage all available resources. So they're an excellent resource, and all they do is stand at the ready should we need to utilize their services in any way. And so I think it's good for everybody to be on the same page as we head into Election Day in case we should need their assistance.
Will they only deploy at your request?
The National Guard is under General Dunbar's command, and these are, I think, operational questions you ought to be asking DMA. Anything else? One thing if you hadn't seen the absentee numbers today, we've had 468,525 absentee ballots returned so far, and that compares to 374,294 for all of 2014, which is the comparable election. So absentee voting is up significantly compared to 2014. What we don't know is whether or not this means more people turning out to vote or people just voting in different ways.
Reed, could you repeat those two numbers again?
Sure.
For this year and
2014? Yeah, so 2014, there were a total of 374,294 absentee ballots counted. So far in 2018, there have been 468,525 ballots returned. We won't know how many.
Are you counting the special elections from earlier this year?
No, this is just for the general election.
Was that first number 317,294?
374,294. Anything else? Don't be shy. All right, well, if anybody else has any other follow-up questions, you know how to reach me. If you want to set up any interviews on Election Day or anything, give us a call. Thanks very much.
Thank you.